Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. By now, everyone knows me, your host, Zack Hamilton, and quite frankly, I know you don't really care. What you care about is who's joining the hot seat and what is their topic today. And so I'm really excited for Nick to join the hot seat. But before we do, the reason why I went out and got Nick is not only is he just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to B2B, but I've had a lot of folks email me, direct mail me, shoot me an email that says, "Hey, look, you've been focused a lot on B2C lately. I'm in B2B. Who do you have in your network that we can learn from?" So thank you to the listeners for all the feedback. As the feedback comes in, we will close the loop and go out and find guests. And so, Nick, as we really kind of think about B2B, you are considered one of the top experts when it comes to the customer experience in the B2B world. So, welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zach. And I appreciate we chatted about this just real quick, but continue to do what you do and push the buttons of customer experience, customer service for that matter, and bring on the right guests and just have genuine, raw conversation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. This has been a fun journey. I never thought I would set out to write a newsletter or a podcast, but here we are. So, Nick, just like all podcasts, I love just to kind of set the scene of, hey, look, you and I are just colleagues. We're having this conversation. There's something that's bugging you about customer experience or customer service. Where are we doing that at? Are we at your favorite restaurant, pub?
Mm.
Are we on a walk? Like, where's that for you?
Yeah, I like to have just real good conversations pretty early in the morning. If it's, if it's after a workout, if it's hanging out at a coffee shop, making sure if it's a local coffee shop, not one of the big brand names, you got to have the intimate where people, it's kind of like Cheers where people know your name. But, it's me bringing that peer into my second home, right? And it's that intimate coffee shop that is not quite known yet, and so it's a little gem.
Yeah, I love that. I've often recorded podcasts at one of my favorite, very local coffee shops, Amex. But what's your go-to drink then? When you order, what's your go-to?
Yeah, so I love the Americanos. Just I think if you do a pour over, I think those are good too. But what you don't want to do is show up at a coffee shop and have them just pour out the coffee from that's already been sitting there for an hour and a half. Americanos, you have to have that shot of espresso along with the water, and so it's a fresh cup of coffee, no room.
Love that. That's awesome. Well, Nick, you have seen it all, man. You have worked with so many different companies, just been in the trenches yourself when it comes to kind of customer experience and customer service when it comes to B2B. And, B2B, I think, has been one of those industries that is really undervested when it comes to CX and CS. What's one of those topics? I'm sure there's many topics, but what's one of those topics that when you hear it, you just absolutely cringe the most?
Yeah, it's something that comes up consistently for me because I'm listening to clients who were with either another partner or with a manufacturer direct, but I call it the go live gap. It's what happens. The sales process on the manufacturer side is I'm going to sell you this widget. I'm going to sell you this technology. I'm going to tell you how awesome it is and it's going to solve all your problems. And that implementation is going to go decent, right? Sometimes you're going to have some job change orders and whatnot, but at go live is typically where that salesperson goes out, that customer success manager potentially goes in, but they're also managing another 300 people, and they're just giving you that best effort, and it's really not good enough. And so there's that gap between what I was hoping for from a consumer or a client and what I'm actually receiving. The technology isn't the issue. It's was it implemented correctly? Was it designed correctly? Was it implemented correctly? And are you supporting me in a way that's going to maximize the investment of my technology? I would say right now that the opportunities that we have today consistently, so I would say on average about 70% of our opportunities that we receive as a contact center partner is organizations that have already gone to the cloud one time and have either been bamboozled to get in this situation, and then they just kind of, the organization or the manufacturer, the partner for that matter, I call it the easy bake oven, right? They just set it and forget it, and then just pick it back up at renewal. And honestly, that just drives the heck out of me because I really want to find ways to consistently help that customer, and that's not being. I feel like there's a broken spot there in the market.
I think that, and I think to your point though, this go live gap, I love that term. It's really kind of paralyzed, especially like the SaaS industry, especially if you think about these up and coming technologies who, to your point, may have some of the best technology. They may be solving it in a different way. They get hit with that fear of messing up, right? Because you're an unknown technology, we are less likely to go with you because if something goes wrong in that go live gap, I could be fired. Versus if I select a more well-known technology, if something goes wrong in that go live gap, I'm probably not going to lose my job. I might lose some trust within my organization of what I've promised my broader stakeholders, right? That social credibility gap has just shrunk for me. And so when I think about my time as just as a buyer, I'm with you. Like that whole go live was about what did I promise my other stakeholders or colleagues that this technology was going to solve for them. And I was more worried about did I deliver for them? Did I articulate their problems well enough to the technology provider to deliver on it? I'm curious if you think about this go live gap, though, talk about some of the negative impact that you've seen, both for the provider, but then for the buyer.
Well, from the provider, people refer others that they know, like, and trust, right? And that's the Bob Berg method in his book. But he specifically, if you don't like the product, or maybe it's not the product itself, but it's just not doing what you were promised, you were over promised and under delivered. For one, you're not referring them to somebody else, so your referrals are going down, but also those salespeople who are probably no longer getting paid on that opportunity are now getting pinged because they were the main point of contact. And now they're focusing on being more reactive to that issue. And they're just trying to deal with it and push it off to somebody else. And it goes into a specific ticket into the abyss. And hopefully you get a response back. And, that doesn't create a good experience. And ultimately, kind of what you were saying, I mean, that's where's the capital, the human capital on the consumer side, but also that trust factor. Did I had these 5 use cases laid out, and I swear that they met all these use cases, but something's broken. And sometimes in organizations, they just want to focus on their business. They want to focus on serving customers. They don't want to focus on what that technology is or where the gap was, because ultimately they don't want to pull back the curtain and say, hey guys, I screwed up and we need to do something about it. And so sometimes they just don't do anything at all and they step back and keep on moving, even though you can kind of see that smoke billowing out from under the covers. And that ultimately impacts your customers, right? I mean, as a married guy, the old analogy is if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And I think there's a true correlation between your people who are your employees internally and how they're serving or supporting the consumer. And so I think it's just a cascading effect of what that issue is. And it's not going to get any better until somebody steps in and either improves current state or, transforms it into something else.
Yeah, and if we just think about the downward impact, right? You think about this go live gap. I mean, ultimately, I think that's why now buyers are asking for, an extended out period, an out clause, right? Termination for convenience, and because they've had so many of these go live gaps. So I think that's one of them. But you think about downstream impact. Well, then you have to continue to supply the resources to fix the go live gap, which now is pushing clients further and further down from their specific implementation process, their go live. You continuously get the question of what value are you providing to us? Because it was never set up correctly to begin with.
Mm.
So that go live gap is now contributing to, well, what's the value that we're getting from this? It's driving lower user rates. It's creating, should we call it the yellow or red from a green, yellow, red, if we're still using that in customer success.
Yep.
And so ultimately, it has all this negative downwind impact that takes a significant amount of resources, not just like human capital from an implementation,
Mhm.
but also that human capital to rebuild trust on something that you just probably spent 6 to 12 months building in order to get the sale. And so, Nick, when you think about successful implementation, successful
Mm.
go lives, let's get to your player tips. What's player tip number one?
Well, before I get to player tip number one, I just thought of this, and it's literally right off the tongue because it's literally happening in real time. Is somebody in a fairly sizable contact center, and this guy I'm having a conversation with, he's the CTO of the company, and he's like, Nick, what makes you guys different from everybody else? Because I just had this implementation for this large CRM a year and a half ago, and they burnt me and they brought in the wrong partner. And he goes, my counselor is telling me to trust more, but I keep getting burnt. And so he goes, what are you going to change different? But I think there's a lot in that to unpack. And for what you're saying is like, what are those tips to bring it full circle? Is like, ultimately, what are you hoping it achieves? Like, what is the outcome instead of just saying, hey, you have this cool widget and it's going to do all this whiz bang technology, and I call it the pixie dust and fairy tales over here, the marketeering over here, look past it and ask real, genuine questions that are going to get the right answers. And what I mean by the right answers is not the right answers that the manufacturer is going to provide you, but enough that you're going to provide that peace of mind and maybe asking clarifying questions, but maybe making sure that it continues to align with the outcomes, set goals, set phases, set guarantees of success. And I think that you can do that by saying, here's our timeline, here's our RACI chart, here's our fill in the blank, and we're going to have maybe the green, yellow, and red metrics and who's on track and who's off track. And if Zach's on track but Nick's off track, like how do I help him get back on track so we keep that timeline and trajectory the way it goes? And if there is some type of guarantee, you can do that too. Like if we for some reason are guaranteeing that you're going to implement within 4 months, and it's on us because we're not waiting on you anymore, where's that guarantee from the consumer perspective to give them that peace of mind? I think ultimately also when it comes to implementation, it's you have to have that user acceptance training. You have to make sure that they're actually signing off on the things that they promise to deliver, and that is part of that go live. And if it's not, then that is issue. Tip number three, I think even post go live, is sitting them and being patient with them over 2, 3, 4 days after go live, and just having an engineer ready and available to address any of the small or large issues that come at them. And in most cases, if you're really good, your engineer is just going to sit there and maybe run some other small tickets or help somebody else on the side. But having that peace of mind is really, really good. And then ultimately after go live, so I'm going to sneak in a 3+1 here for you, is meet with those customers consistently. It's not the set it and forget it model. Like if you're not focusing on providing that high touch, if that's quarterly business reviews, if it's, hey, let me show you the highlights of the release notes for this month, for this quarter, for this year, and then let's build that trajectory forward for phases of that roadmap that you're hoping to accomplish. You need somebody that's going to look out, that's what's best for you.
Yeah, one, thank you for the 3+1. It's so interesting when I was taking notes, and when you mentioned the user acceptance testing, the UAT, you know how often I've seen buyers just accept an implementation without really having to define, well, what is the UAT? What is it that I'm going to be signing off for? But then the downside to that is how many manufacturers or software companies, for example, actually bake that into their process.
Right.
So that's one of the key things that I would be looking for when I'm having those conversations of what does the go live process look like? And I'm going to be looking for, is there a UAT process?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
In most cases, there's not. It's best effort. It's a cookie cutter implementation, and then they're going off to the next one, and they're doing bare bones. And if there is a change or it doesn't meet that specific timeline, and it could be on them as well, they're still going to charge you more for it. So just be aware of those job change orders and making sure that what they're promising, they're going to deliver in the scope that they sign.
yeah, I love that. I love I thought the bonus one too of like the open office hours for an engineer. I mean, there's so many little tweaks that are going to get done post live. And what better way just to deliver a great user experience by saying, hey, you know what? Let me make those tweaks for you. Let me do this. Let me do this. Because I want to make sure that you're excited about what we just delivered for you. Because if I'm not, well, guess what? I'm just not going to log into the tool. I'm not going to leverage it. The change effort now to get me to log back in is far greater than just having some open office hours that I could leverage in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. Or maybe that individual is not even going to just, they would rather jump on because it is that open office hours versus submitting a ticket, because that does add friction. Even if it's an email or if it's in a portal or if it's a phone call, that person just might not do it because they get busy. But if they double click on that link and they know that somebody's there over that 2, 3, 4 day period, it just adds a little bit of high touch in that process.
Yeah, I would say the other piece of this, like go live, I'd love to pick your brain real quick on it. I have seen is like we've built kind of this, we've invoked emotion during the sales process and we're really bought into the use cases. And then in that handoff period, you brought it up at the beginning, but then that handoff between sales and then the implementation and customer success team is very minimal. And what I've also seen is a lot of frustration on the buyer's side where that first kickoff call to really kind of plan the go live and the implementation process actually just starts back out as a discovery conversation. So, and that to me, I think broadens this go live gap.
Yeah.
Why do you think brands can't nail it? Or why do you think they're struggling to nail it?
Because they stay in their silos, because that sales rep is saying, I'm only measured and my bonus is only on X. And so I'm going to stay in my box. And they're not taking that extra 30 minutes, maybe 15, 30 minutes and saying, hey guys, here's the brain dump. I know that implementation needs these 30 questions answered. Here's what I learned in the discovery question. Here's Zack. He's a little squirrely one and he has this crazy podcast, but here's what he values. So maybe creating even some small personas. You could take 15, 20, 30 minutes, fill out the questions that implementation team does, and then do the same thing, from implementation to go live, and have that sales rep and that implementation team part of that customer service kickoff call as you're introducing that customer and just saying, hey guys, we had a great experience. I'm so thankful for you. I'd love to introduce you to the customer success person. And here's a little bit about them and their expertise. Feel free to reach out to us in the meantime. But there's not that transition, that hand in hand. It's more black and white. It's more, and honestly, where does that buyer experience stop? Is it stop at the signature, or does it stop at the end of that contract?
Yeah.
And I think that's a tough thing that organizations value. And I'll say this, maybe it's a little bit spicy, but I'd say organizations value a new client more than they value retaining them.
Oof. That is spicy. Now you're really starting to talk some unfucking your CX link. But you know what's so interesting though is like when you think about that, I love that question that you posed of where's the buying experience stop? Because a lot of times brands, you're not selling enterprise license agreements or ELAs anymore, right? You're really in this land and expand mode. And if you think about time to value, that is the equation that really kind of drives time to cross sell or time to new investment, time to repeat purchase, whatever it is you want to call it. Yet too many sales folks stay invested during that implementation period. The go live gap broadens, and then they wonder why, well, now I don't have an expansion opportunity in here.
Yeah. And then the CSM is trying to sell them something that maybe they don't even need, and they don't have a relationship with them because they haven't touched with them in a year and a half. And they're like, hey, Zack, I have this technology and it's a really good fit. Do you want it?
Yeah.
And they're like, who are you? And what happened to my sales rep? And no, I don't want your new product because I haven't talked to you ever.
And you don't even know what my business is.
Exactly.
It's this whole kind of piece, like again, it just goes back to a similar CX challenges across all the industries. Silos, where's the ownership and accountability? Not the sponsorship, but the ownership. And ultimately, do we have an aligned and shared set of KPIs versus each team having their own? Nick,
Mm.
this has been an incredible conversation. You brought a little bit of spiciness and some fire to the hot seat, which I appreciate. I'm sure our listeners might want to get in touch with you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to find me is just search for my name on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. You can always shoot me an email. I can put it in the show notes as well. And I think Zach, we touched on it just a little bit, but I am writing a sneaky book here coming up called The Heart of Service, and ultimately I wrote it because it was more of a rant, right? It's not necessarily I've seen a lot of organizations in the contact center assessing, fixing, watching teams struggle and tools that promise the world. And I wrote it because I wanted to create something different because there's a lot of CX books out there. There's a lot of customer service books out there, but it's a fictional company. It's called Carelio and it's made up, but everything that they face is real, right? They face conversations that are strong and hard to deal with. They face a metric, every failure, every breakthrough, executive buy-in, etc. It's really it's a story, but it's really a playbook as well. So I'm looking forward to coming out here in the next couple of months. So stay tuned there.
Love it. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Nick, thank you again for coming to the hot seat. Don't be a stranger. Come back soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Zach.
Yep. Thanks, bud. Cheers.